Hey guys, this is Bharadwaj with Phone Arena, and as a part of the comparison series, today we are comparing two 7-inch tablets again. Uh, so it's Apple versus Samsung all over again. This is the iPad mini and this is the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2. These don't need much introduction, so let's get to the comparison. So first up, let's talk about the design factor of both these devices. The Apple iPad mini is completely laden with aluminum as with Apple's traditional style. So this is the new design incorporated with the iPad mini. It echoes the design philosophy of the iPhone 5 a little bit, and this is completely aluminum and it looks absolutely beautiful. So you have the Apple logo on the iPad insignia here, uh, which is the only glossy parts on the back, and otherwise it's completely matte. But we find it a bit fingerprint magnet, so that's a bit of a letdown. But otherwise, the iPad Mini looks absolutely stunning, and the front is we have the white version, and the front is fully glass apart from the home button and the front-facing camera. So that's the design of the iPad Mini, which is so much better than the bland look that the Galaxy Tab 2 gives. But not to dish too much, because the Galaxy Tab 2 has its own advantages, which we'll see later. So otherwise, this is fully plastic and it's pretty good too. On the front, you have the Gorilla Glass, just like the iPad Mini, which is probably the version 2. And this has no buttons on the front. So Android Honeycomb required no buttons, and since that, tablets on uh, running Android didn't require buttons. So that's completely blank on the front. On the back, you have the plastic Samsung back, which looks actually pretty good. It's not glossy and it's matte, so it looks really nice. And you have the chrome strip on the camera, which might tell you it's cheap, but otherwise it's pretty good. And we actually like the buttons on the sides and the slots on the left. So that's the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2's design. Uh, Build quality is obviously better on the iPad mini because it's massively thinner. You can see here the size comparison of both. So this is a 7.7-inch display tablet, and this is a 7.85-inch tablet. You can see the huge bezel on the Galaxy Tab 2, whereas on the iPad mini you have pretty much 3 millimeter bezel on the uh, iPad mini sides, but on the top and the bottom you have a slightly larger bezel to accommodate better ergonomics on the landscape. So that's about the iPad mini, and the build is definitely better. You can see that the edges have been machined to look very shiny, and that really adds to the premium look that the iPad brings. There is nothing of that sort on the Galaxy Tab 2, but that's not really a complaint, is it? Because we expect Apple to be premium, and it's definitely premium for the price we pay for. So the thickness of the iPad mini is ridiculously thin. It comes in at just 7.2 millimeters, while the Tab 2 comes in at 10.5 millimeters. I'm not sure if you can see the difference, because unlike the iPad mini, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2 is pretty much curved at the edges, so you won't really notice the thickness unless you actually hold it in the hand. So when it comes to ergonomics, we definitely prefer the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2 because it's easier to hold with one hand. My hands are huge, but even you can actually hold the tablet in one hand. So that's a good thing going for the Galaxy Tab 2, and the UI is actually made for usage in portrait. So that works well in the favor of the Galaxy Tab 2. On the iPad mini, though, it's kind of ridiculous to hold it in the one hand because it's pretty wide. This has a 4 is to 3 aspect ratio screen, so it's pretty wide and actually not very usable with one hand. But on the landscape, it's a delight because it weighs a lot lesser than other tablets, So it's a delight to hold even with one hand in the landscape. So that's awesome for the iPad Mini. The Galaxy Tab 2 pretty much is we don't know because the Android UI does not scale well to the landscape, and pretty much in this orientation we do not prefer the home buttons here, we prefer it here. So that's a difference that we don't like, and that's about it. There is not nothing special going for the Galaxy Tab 2. It's perfectly ergonomical in the portrait, and we definitely prefer this when we compare it to the iPad Mini in portrait. So this almost a portrait tablet, and this is better to use in the landscape orientation. So that's about the design, build, and ergonomics of these tablets. So before I forget, we should mention that the iPad Mini weighs 40 grams lesser than the Tab 2. So hence it feels amazingly light, and since there is a larger surface area to cover, the weight is equally distributed, and it's a pleasure to hold in two hands, that is. So that's about the design, build, and ergonomics of these tablets. So let's talk about the display of these two tablets then. The iPad Mini has a 7.9-inch 1024 by 768 display, whereas the Galaxy Tab 2 has a 7-inch 1024 by 600 display. So the difference in the resolution is not that much, only a couple of pixels higher on the iPad Mini. That too to accommodate the larger screen, which is 4:3 aspect ratio, just like the original iPad. We actually can't imagine how people put up with the original iPad and the iPad 2, but when people have put up with that, we definitely think then that they can put up with this resolution too. But we honestly find both these devices to be not optimized for reading, maybe other consumption purposes like movie watching probably better, but even for movie watching we prefer the Galaxy Tab 2 because of its better aspect ratio and less of blank space during movies and any video, of course. So that's a bit of a difference when it comes to the displays. But when it comes to color accuracy, the brightness, and anything associated with the factor of the display, the iPad Mini is certainly better and feels really premium. But we are wondering why Apple had actually increased the air gap between the screen and the display. So as you can see in this angle itself, you can see that there is a black border around the display, which makes it look like the display is inside the glass. That's not usually the case with all Apple products, but that is the case with the iPad Mini. And that's always the case for other tablets because they don't actually reduce the air gap, unlike Apple. So that's also a reflective factor for the display in both these devices. When it comes to watching movies, as we said, we prefer this, but when it comes to color accuracy and other stuff, we definitely prefer this display. So that's about it for the display. Both these are low PPI screens and not actually very good for reading, but otherwise they are pretty fine on their own, respectively. So let's talk about the hardware then. The iPad Mini is actually having the same internals as the iPad 2, which is the Apple A5 chip with a dual core processor. So that means that you can actually run heavy duty apps without worrying too much about it. Since this is just 1024 by 768 resolution, the A5 chip can actually handle it pretty much well. This is a dual core uh, processor with dual core graphics, and it has just 512 MB of RAM, just like the iPad 2. And the Galaxy Tab 2 on the other hand has a pretty measly processor in current standards, but in its time it was pretty good, which is the TI OMAP 4430, and it has a dual core 1 GHz processor and 1 GB of RAM. We are not sure whether it is Android or the processor, but we find that the interface is a bit laggy. As you can see when I'm swiping around in the interface, it's a bit laggy and not really optimized. So, and as we always know, the processor is extremely optimized on the iPad Mini. So it's ridiculously smooth and always easy to operate. So let's get to the other parts of the hardware then. There are two front-facing cameras on both the front-facing camera on both these tablets. So this is a VGA front-facing camera, whereas the iPad mini has a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera and can do 720p video on the front. So that's called the FaceTime camera. So as you can see here, there is also ambient light sensor besides the front-facing camera. Same can be expected on the uh, Galaxy Tab 2, but you can also see that there is a earpiece on the Galaxy Tab 2. We'll get to that soon. So otherwise, the hardware on the iPad mini is just pretty basic. You have the rear facing cameras. This is a 5 megapixel iSight camera with 1080p video recording. And on the Tab 2, you also have a rear facing camera, which is a 3 megapixel unit, and it has 720p recording. So the quality wise, we definitely prefer the iPad mini because this has almost the same camera as the iPhone 4, which is pretty good. While the Galaxy Tab 2, not much. It's okay, but the iPad mini is definitely better. But remember this is a tablet, not exactly used for taking photos. But in case you're looking to take photos, then the iPad mini is good for taking photos. And the iPad mini otherwise has the uh, lock rotation switch, the volume rocker, and the lightning port along with the stereo speakers here, which are very nice to hear on this tablet. And that's about it. But on the Galaxy Tab 2 you have a lot of features. Let's take a look at the features one by one. On the bottom you have the 30-pin proprietary connector, which we can argue that Samsung probably wanted to be like Apple and fixed a proprietary converter there, proprietary port there, which is actually a very hassle, just like the iPad mini, because both these proprietary ports require their own cables, and we don't find them plenty like the micro USB. So that's a bit of hassle. And even the Galaxy Tab 2 has stereo speakers on the bottom. They sound okay, not too good or not too bad. We are just indifferent about it. So on the right hand side, you can see you have the power button and the volume rocker, and on the top you have the 3.5 mm jack. Similarly, on the top you can see the 3.5 mm jack on the iPad mini and the lock button switch. This is probably the secondary microphone that is used for video recording. And let's get to the interesting features of the Galaxy Tab 2 then. As we already noted, there is a earpiece on the front, which means that you can actually make calls with this device by placing this earpiece on your ear. So on the bottom, you have to note that there is a microphone here that will facilitate voice calls on this tablet. And for facilitating voice calls, you actually have a full-size SIM card slot on the side, along with the micro SD card slot, which can expand your memory if you run too low on memory. Also, you can backup or just use your old memory card on this tablet. So that's a huge advantage for the Galaxy Tab 2. It can make calls, it can actually send messages with the Messages app, and this is actually a pretty big phone. If you're looking for a big phone without spending too much of money on it, then the Galaxy Tab 2 might be your choice. The iPad mini is a proper iPad, and it's definitely a tablet, and it has a lot going for it. So let's talk about the other things on these tablets, which include the software. So this iPad runs on iOS 6, which is the latest version of Apple's mobile software, and this is pretty much the same running on the other iPads. So recently it had included Siri, and not only that, the iPad has a lot of tablet apps. As you can see right here, GarageBand is one great example of a tablet app which is kind of non-existent in the Android world, like any tablet app that is. So that's a ridiculously great advantage for the iPad ecosystem and the OS that is. So when we talk about the ecosystem, we can go deeper, but we don't want to actually do that when we compare these devices. You just want to know that the iPad has a great ecosystem and a lot of apps, tablet optimized apps, unlike Android, which is pretty much still great with phones and not tablets. We'll see why. So Samsung is running a custom skin over Android 4.1 Jelly Bean on this tablet. So this recently got updated to Android 4.1.1 Jelly Bean. We'll just show you that quickly, and you can see that it's 4.1.1 Jelly Bean on the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2. So on 4.1.1, Samsung has done a lot of customizations on top of Android, which is called the TouchWiz. So with TouchWiz comes a lot of options for the software, which is the one of the things is the mini app. You can actually add a windowed app and drag it around just like that. So that's the mini app function. And of course, with 4.1 you have expandable notifications, and Samsung has done a little bit of customization to its notification bar, just like its other Android 4.1.1 devices, just like its phones. So otherwise it's pretty much the same. With Android 4.1 you get Jelly Bean, and since this is a tablet come phone, you can actually make phone calls with it. You can actually take around this device. So Google Now will actually be useful on this tablet, unlike other tablets which are pretty much useless when it comes to Google Now, because you are not going to carry it around everywhere. So that's pretty much advantages for the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2, and it also has a little bit of special apps like S Planner, S Suggest, and other things. The S Planner is the calendar made by Samsung, and most apps have been modified by Samsung to suit its own TouchWiz interface. So otherwise, you don't have much tablet apps. You have some which adapt to the tablet interface only recently. So like Flipboard, which works great in landscape as well as portrait. So that's pretty much it for Android. There is not much going for the software because of lack of apps, and of course the ecosystem is pretty much highly fragmented. So you don't get all the services in a single package, and you can of course use Google services, and Google services work based on the Galaxy Tab 2, of course, which is an Android tablet. And since this is also a very big phone, you can actually look forward to using Android on this device, because the 7-inch screen is not pretty much of a disappointment when it comes to apps, because all these apps scale pretty nicely, and it's pretty useful in the portrait form factor. It's only in the landscape which is very horribly bad and pretty much borders on unusable. So let's get to the conclusion then. These are two very different tablets. The iPad mini is actually the proper luxurious companion if you are looking at one tablet like that. So this is completely the iPad in a smaller form factor. This is a very small iPad 2, if I'm allowed to say. And the Galaxy Tab 2 is actually a very big phone, a very big Android phone that can make calls, and you can actually use this as a phone if you have a very large pocket, that is. So which one do you prefer? The hardware features, the phone capabilities, or the actual use of a tablet? So you can let us know in the comment section below, and do hit like button if you like this comparison. And if you want more comparison videos like these, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button above. So that's it for the comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2 and the Apple iPad mini. So this is Bharadwaj, and stay tuned for more comparisons. Thanks for watching.